This is the Final Word Daily. Adam Collins and Bharat Sundaresan with you on the SCG Turf, the day before the fifth test for Morris Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. It has been an incredibly busy 2 days behind the scenes. Usman Khawaja retired. Jeff and I were speculating a couple of days ago whether he would. Well, he has. It'll be his 88th and final test match, and what a record it has been for him at the top of the list in the last 4 years. We'll come to that in a moment. Yeah. Steve Smith in his press conference just then, though, saying that all options are on the table for the Aussie team. He's surprised by the pitch that's been presented. He's offering a sort of a broader critique on pitches in Australia, and he's being asked all sorts of questions about his own future. I mean, there's quite a bit to wade through here. Well, perhaps we'll start with the fact that we have no idea who's playing for Australia tomorrow.
Yeah, it's pitching R behind us. You can see pretty much the entire Australian team continued, or most of them. As soon as the Hessian was removed around 10 minutes ago, they all just surrounded the pitch at different spots. They're looking at the grassy spots on the good length area on both ends. They're trying to gauge the firmness of the pitch. But it's become now a big part of Test cricket in Australia, hasn't it, Adam? I mean, historically, this is what you would see in the subcontinent when an Australian or an English team goes there. But now Australia more and more is becoming is up there in the top 2 most difficult places to bat in Test cricket. And Steve Smith has spoken a lot about batting averages going down and bowling averages going down. He spoke about it today as well. As a result, you're seeing more and more selection calls being left very late. It's not just whether Todd Murphy will play or not. There's also speculation that Bo Webster and Cam Green play together. I mean, I thought that could happen yesterday based on how long Bo Webster spent fielding at gully. Well, Cam Green didn't do that. I mean, he does have the thumb injury to deal with. And both of them batted and bowled for equal amounts of time in the nets yesterday. So I honestly think they've left all options on the table.
Yeah, and it does feel like the rational thing to do. It's not, Jeff was critical the other week of them leaving it late with cloak and dagger stuff. This is really not that. They genuinely don't know what's doing with the pitch. 6 millimetres of grass, that's one thing we do know, but the colour of it's very similar to last year, a test match that finished inside 7 sessions. It could change dramatically between now and then. We know the way that pitches can have that change in colour in the last 24 hours. So, it could well mean that Richardson does play in an all-out seam attack. It could mean that Stark will bowl, and we didn't volunteer to Smith about their fitness coming into the fifth test, but Smith himself put those 2 names up as well. They're 2 guys who have played a lot of cricket. Stark historically has tapered off in the 5th test of a series. I can't imagine they would do that with so much on the line, with world test points having dropped their tests last week, and they're so mindful of making the final again. But all these types of conversations that are far more common now than they were even a few years ago when the pitch was less of a factor.
Yeah, it's very simple. They don't trust the pitches as they did back in the day anyway. They do in Adelaide. I mean, there seems to be this connection they have, or this trust they have with Damon Hoff in the surface. Nathan Lyon will go out there and have a chat with Damon Hoff 3 days, 4 days out from the test if he is in the squad. But in the last 4 years, Steve Smith said, I mean, just go back 12 months. Yes, we were speculating whether Rohit Sharma is going to play or not, and this was the spot when we both realized that he's going to drop himself. But the pitch even back then looked greener and grassier than it does right now. But they just don't know what the surface will play like, because you can't just you can no longer stick to the old trope of Sydney will play. And because when was the last time we came to Sydney, Adam? And that question of are you going to play 2 spinners or not was not us. It's about whether 1 spinner will play or not.
Well, that's right. I mean, usually the 2 spinner question is going, and Crash Craddock asked a good question to Smith of this at the press conference. It goes to these historical ideas of what Australian pitchers should do, and they should have these characteristics, but at the moment they don't. It's changed a lot in the last 5 years. Smith spoke about the ball in concert with the different pitch conditions contributing to top 4 players having lower averages, and that's all part of it. Interesting that with Green, he made the point that Green's doing the hard bit and Green's getting in on these tougher pitches but not able to capitalise, but not ruling out that he'll play. So he's not locked him in, far from it, but he may get another opportunity this week rather than sending him back to the Big Bash.
No, I think especially since they pushed him down to number 7, and the only test he's got there was at the MCG pitch, and I said it last week as well, that he is the new Mitch Marsh, isn't he, Adam? I said it on our radio show. We do a lot of shows together. It's a good thing. So he has become the new Mitch Marsh, where he divides opinion. I mean, you just say something about Cam Green online, and there are a lot of people who don't want him to play anymore, but there are still people supporting him. I thought Will Pekoski spoke beautifully about him on Channel 7 and spoke about the conditions, the pitches, and compared him with other all-rounders, which just a couple of days ago. And it is fair, but Cam Green, more than anyone else, will know that he wants to get out of this summer with some sort of score, to look back on. It won't be easy to make 100 batting at number 7, but I think based on what Steve Smith said, that batting has been easier from 5 onwards. Maybe that's where Australia want him to bat for the next couple of years, Cam Green, so that he develops the confidence to become the top order or top 4 test batter that they think he will be for the next 7-8 years.
Yeah, and remember, this was the ground where Bo Webster made an excellent test debut in very challenging conditions last year. And the other man who'll want to score before the series is done, of course, is Jake Weatherall. Got that 77 at Brisbane, but lacking for runs since then. Baz, to round out segment 1, let's talk about Usman Khawaja. We'll come to England after the break as well. We know they're 12, but, it's hardly leaving you on tenterhooks there. They named it about 24 hours ago. Usman Khawaja announced his retirement yesterday. A 55-minute press conference, which, as Daniel Brettig said to me, it was more akin to a podcast than a press conference. He got a lot off his chest, had a lot on his mind, the online conversation around that has been vociferous. I just want to state a couple of numbers first. Khawaja in Asia averaging in the 60s, at the top of the list averaging 48. His career divided beautifully into 2 segments of 44 test matches. The first half averaging 40, the second to this point 46. 8 tonnes in the first half, 8 tonnes in the second, and of course it all started here back 4 years ago. And when you go back to the very, very start, 15 years ago, when he walked out through those gates in front of the lady stand behind us, it was as the first Muslim cricketer, and that continues to be a big part of the conversation from his perspective at the end as well, when able to reflect on the dressing room he first started in, how it's changed, and how the public conversation has evolved, is that the right word? Changed, let's just say, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I met him, around half an hour after his press conference, after he was done posing for those lovely pictures you see online with his family, his wife and kids and parents at the SCG. And he had spoken about how he only grew up stone's throw away from the SCG, not being able to afford to come and watch Test cricket, waiting till the last session when the gates would be thrown open. And even before we get... So anyway, going back to that chat, and he did... we did both as 2 brown men who live in Australia. He obviously moved when he was much younger than I did, or how old I was when I did. But we both agreed that this was his final chance to really air out everything that has been he's holding on to for so long, 15 years, but maybe for the last 15 weeks or so, as we've led into what will now officially be his final test summer. Because in 4 days' time or 5 days' time, he will no longer be an active cricketer. So in all likelihood, this was the last time he did a press conference as an active cricketer, and he wanted to use that voice to talk about his journey, but also talk about what lies ahead. I mean, there were a couple of very lovely moments through that whole it felt like the life and times of Usman Khawaja, where and it was very subcontinental, just the way he pointed at his dad and said, "Dad, you're happy with 88 test matches?" And it was a beautiful moment there, and the way he so glowingly spoke about his wife Rachel and the role she's played in his life. But it was always going to be, I think that's probably why they started the press conference at 8:15, which is an odd time, very early for a press conference during a test match or any match in cricket. But because maybe the team management or Uzi himself knew that he would have a lot to say. And he did. I mean, his speech itself, the pre-prepared speech itself, to start with, had a lot of storylines in it. But then once it was thrown open to the room, he started, you could see that he was getting emotional, and I could see it in his eyes. It was all going to come out.
Yeah, and I just want to go to that point specifically. So there is a lot of criticism around Usman's commentary around Perth and the back spasm, right? And I get that, to be honest. I get why people are like, hang on a minute. I know Jason Gillespie's been someone today who's made comment about this. Hang on a minute. Isn't that fair criticism that a player's preparation would be looked at when he goes down in the first session? Isn't that the same as it would be for anyone? I understand where that's coming from, but I also understand the point you're about to make now, I suspect, around when being provided the megaphone to talk about grievances appropriately, talk about grievances that have been collected across a number of years, that it all comes flooding out in a disjointed way, and this is one of many things where he's felt like he's been treated harshly. So whether it all lines up in a beautiful linear way, probably not, but there is a messiness to it inherently.
No, I'm from personal experience. I've written about racism and just discrimination that I've faced in my life and in my time in Australia. And it's a weird thing. I'm doing it right now. I'm writing a piece for CricBuzz. I'm in the middle of it. And it's only when you sit down to write or you start collecting your thoughts that a lot of things that you experience, you hear, you're told, it all comes to the surface because, often it's so, especially if you're a public figure like Usman Khawaja is, or you are in the public space like I am, you're just hit with it all the time. And most times I'm not saying you just like sweep it under the carpet. You can't react to everything, right? I mean, just in the last 24 hours, more people have asked me to go kill myself than most people have otherwise. So you know how thick-skinned I am, but by the fifth time that happens, you kind of go, hang on, really? Like, all I do is talk about cricket, or now I talk about football, or I go toss the coin at an AFL game, and that's all it takes for you to want me to do something like that, or to say, I'm surprised, honestly. I'm impressed with the number of descriptions people can come up with to describe colored people in this country. And it really amazes me. And every time I think, they must have run out of something, they just come up with something new. So to imagine, and I moved to this country when I was 32. I was well established in my life. I was well established in my profession, as you know, Adam. But imagine Usman Khawaja moving here at 5. We're pretty much the same age. And he moves here in the 90s when Australia wasn't even as multicultural as it is now. And to cop everything he's copped from that period, and then to expect him to be very, cogent, like you said, and be very specific about, okay, this is what the former players said, so this is what I have a problem against. This is what the media wrote, this is what I have a problem with you guys. And even in that whole thing, he spoke a lot. Many times he said, I don't have anything personal against anyone here. And so it's only natural, it's only human for it all to get conflated the way it did, like you said, when he was given the megaphone to air his views out. And especially, I think it was more at least in my conversations with him, it wasn't so much the criticism around his numbers and his form and the lack of runs, but it was about his commitment to cricket, his dedication to this team. As Steve Smith said, he's always prepared the same way for the last 15 years. And even he spoke about how unfair it was, that bit of the criticism. But when you're in a what kind of a capping off like 15 years of what you felt as an international cricketer, and probably 25 years of what you felt as probably he's been the one coloured cricketer in most teams that he's played in for most parts of his career, it's all just going to come out that way. And I think it's almost important that you as a reader or a viewer or a listener just let him have his moment and don't nitpick. And I know it's natural for you to nitpick and say, hey, hang on, he's pointing fingers at me. He's not. I think he's just telling you what it's felt like. And that's what, every time you are given the microphone or you're given the laptop to write about what you feel like, that's what we're trying to say. We're just trying to say, hey, look, you wouldn't know what it feels like. This is what it feels like. So just listen to us and just say, okay, just show some empathy is all I say.
Yeah, it's beautifully summed up, and it's the lived experience that that I certainly don't have and you certainly do. And Khawaja was keen to reiterate time and time again yesterday the love and affection he has for the country and what Australia's given him. You do the same thing. You probably, in the last couple of years, become one of the most high-profile migrants to Australia. You had an Australian story on you last year, not least. So it's not about any antipathy towards Australia as a country. It's just and it's not obviously unique to Australia either. Racism, far from that too. But it is something that yesterday felt like a conversation that was almost inevitable, that when Khawaja did this final long press conference, that this would be a strong through line.
Oh yeah, very much. And look, I love Australia. I cannot tell you how grateful I am for the second opportunity I've got, my wife and me, that Australia has given us to live the life we do, to breathe the air we do, and to do many of the things that I've been able to do here, which India would have never offered me the opportunity. So, and I think Usman Khawaja is the same. The number of times he spoke about the gratitude he has, not just for himself, but his family. His parents were sitting in that very room. For them to have moved from Pakistan when they did and to have experienced everything that they did, we will always be grateful for that. But that doesn't mean that, there's a thin line between asking us to be grateful or for us to show gratitude and at every point to be told that, but that's where it ends. right? You got this opportunity, so you cannot speak about your experiences. You cannot talk about how you feel. And the gaslighting bit that Usman Khawaja spoke about, and I wasn't expecting him to point at me when he spoke about that bit, but as the only other colored man in that room, or colored person in that room, as soon as he brought it up, and I was happy he brought me into it, because I didn't want him to be accused of just playing the race card as, oh, just the whinging brown guy, because there was another brown guy in the room, and I've, as you know, experienced a lot of it. Even as recently as Perth, when I got pulled up by the security guard, and it was always Usman Khawaja who's had to jump in alongside Manas and Steve Smith to bail me out in these situations. So yeah, I mean, it was always going to happen the way it did yesterday. Nobody expected it to go on as long as it did. But in all of that, let's also not forget that you spoke about his numbers, and what only two other openers in Australian Test history have averaged more than him, and to have scored 16 Test centuries, to have come into the team at a very transitional phase in Australian cricket history, and to have sort of finished it on a high with an Ashes win. I think there's a cricketing aspect to that as well you can't ignore.
Yeah, I mean, of his 16 Test hundreds, about 8 of them are great hundreds for different reasons. The one against the pink ball in Adelaide, where it was the powers of concentration against Rabada and Morkel and Kyle Abbott, I think it was that week, who had the ball going around corners, or of course what he did when he came back here and made twin centuries against England, which was so symbolic back at his home ground where he'd played so much cricket, or what he did in Pakistan, 2 centuries there, 5 in Asia. Who can forget the 141 in Dubai, where he batted for 8.5 hours to save a Test match, but it felt like a win in the circumstances after sandpaper and all the rest of it, batting for all 5 days at Edgbaston, player of the match performance to set up a famous Ashes victory. That's just a handful of them. There are many of them, and that speaks volumes about Usman Khawaja's match-winning abilities and why he will be hard to replace. He spoke yesterday about replacing senior players, replacing experienced openers is incredibly difficult, and that will be a conversation for another day. Baz, before we go to the break, as we will just in a moment, a reminder as I pick up the Zeus that we are into the new year. A bit beaten up, this Zeus box now. I've carried it around the country with me. But as on the side it says here, sleep refreshed. I said it on the Michael Bevan episode a couple of days ago. What better New Year's resolution? Well, I'll reframe that. What New Year's resolution doesn't include some kind of self-improvement? Every New Year's resolution, I reckon, involves something about trying to make yourself better in some way, shape or form. Well, sleep is central to it. If it's got anything to do with your health, we know that sleep is front and centre. And if you want to sleep better this year and you've got a snoring issue, there is a very strong chance it's something to do with your tongue. And this technology, just placing it on your chin there, very small, unobtrusive, directly attacks that. And as someone who snores, sleeps better. Sleeping better is central to living better.
Oh, as a sleep apnea poster boy, I have been for the last 13, 14 years. Trust me, sleep is everything. I remember a phase in my mid-20s where I thought I was sleeping well, but I wasn't, because I was groggy throughout the day and I wasn't sure what was happening. And then once I found out I had sleep apnea, you just realize the significance of sleep. And like with what we do and with what a lot of you do as well, you don't realize how much sleep you miss out on. And there's one thing I've learned, and you have as well, Adam, that you can't make up for lost sleep. So don't do that. Don't let it impact your long-term health. Get one of these like I have. Put it on your chin, like maybe give yourself a bit of a shave like I should, and you'll see the benefits. You'll just wake up feeling fresher.
Zeus Sleeps, all in the show notes. TFW 2025 is the offer code. Okay, back in a minute. We'll talk England and we'll say goodbye. This is the final word. Adam Collins and Bharat Sundaresan. Thanks to Morris Blackburn Lawyers, our principal partner on the show. I'm back wearing the Big Boots UK as well. You've seen them on the screen plenty. You will during the week. 10% off. People have loved them as well. England have named their 12. Baz, we know that England haven't got the services of Gus Atkinson, who bowled very nicely last week at Melbourne, did his hammy, but they will get a chance to see either Matty Potts or Shoaib Bashir for the first time in the series. We've not seen Bashir at all. It seems foretold that Bashir would get his chance in the final test. However, the same deliberations for them around the green surface as it stands at the moment.
Bashir's series reminds me of Kuldeep Yadav. A couple of times he's come here. I mean, remember, it was here in 2018-19. He bowled really well. He did, and Ravi Shastri said he will be our number one pick whenever we play an away test. And then I don't think he's played ever since in Australia or England or these countries, and maybe he might have played a test or two. But he went through that 2021 series not getting a game. I don't know. I know Shoaib Bashir's in the 12, but from what we are hearing about the pitch, just the weather, the way it has been, I wonder if he does get a go. I saw Matt Potts bowl for a long time yesterday. At one point, Ben Stokes stood with his arm around him. But that's how England do it. I mean, they all have their arms around each other anyway. So that's, you can't read too much into it. But yeah, personally, I would be surprised, because the only way Bashir comes in is, I guess, by replacing Will Jacks. I mean, there's no way they're playing Jacks and Bashir unless they drop a batter. But who could that batter be after how well Jacob Bethel played the other day in that run chase at the Melbourne Cricket Ground? So it looks unlikely, in my opinion. And maybe we'll get to see Potts for the first time in this Ashes series.
Yep, and he'll hit the same spot all day long. He's indefatigable, Matty Potts. That's what he's got going for him. He's earned a chance. And Bashir, if he doesn't play, it'll be one of those storylines that gets talked about doubtless after, that so much cricket was invested in him only to not play a role in the series they were building him up to. I saw him at Kirribilli House a couple of nights ago when we were there for the PM's function, and kind of looked a bit of a lost soul, really, Shoaib Bashir, not having any purpose on this tour other than playing in a couple of the Lions games. The heavy roller's doing its thing at the moment. Baz, keep it on there, boys. All day with the heavy roller. Roll that thing to death. We want to see a 5-day test match. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. There's weather in the air. It's Sydney after all. We'll be here every single day of the test match. Great work today, Baz. You can find more about Zeus Sleeps or Big Boots in the show notes. Likewise, Morris Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's #1 plaintiff law firm. And if you really like what we do, patreon.com/the final word. That's there too. You can join so many people who are going to be at our meetup, I believe, on evening 4 of this Sydney test. Okay, that's it. All the words have been said. We'll catch you tomorrow.